Turkish. Hello, Shakespeare. How you doing? Fun fact, in Spanish, the word for bishop in chess is alfil. And that actually comes from Arabic. Fil. The same word fil as this. Meaning elephant, because the bishop traditionally was to represent elephant units, somehow. Similarly, in Russian, the word for bishop is skor, and that also means elephant. Okay. 10-159. Haven't made a huge dent in it, but we're getting there. Okay, gonna do some Chinese now. Night. Night. Man. Yen. Yo. 5. Ducks are drinking wine. Bambas. Bamba, okay, Bambas is duck. Okay, I have now leveled up. Let's see what the XP situation is now. 10,340 out of 12,500. And as always, viewers can choose my next language for me just with a follow and a $5 to my Patreon. I buy a computer or quack, and here's another example. I like to point these out. For this word for or, but sounds vaguely like Hogun and the hok in Hogun in Korean or waku in Japanese, and that because it is the exact same Chinese character. Oh, I see. This is Dikhe Ishai Fui, which means do you want food? But yeah, are you hungry? That kind of thing. How are the boys? Cine tapon. Poso milao. Pote. When is it? Proteine. Udros. Protopulo. In the designated chicken-eating area, obviously.
Leave.
Monsieur.
See.
Livre. Liwe, livre. Maciej. Yeah. Si. Wysoki. Maciej. Proč? Víte. Počkej. A. Si.
Oilen coginio panas.
Hakab. Hefed. 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 Hek. 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 Mwalimu.
This is Arabic. And it's from Mu'allim.
Juma ni mwalimu mke.
Oh, thanks to cat sons. Meow and the pictures of the fish. That's they were proud.
Sööpä. Kupu. Yrittävät. Uraista. Omena.
Are in the city center. And it's got some interesting aspects to it.
여자는
I mean,
어느 나라에 있습니까? 여자는 어느 나라에 있습니까? 여자는 어느 나라에 있습니까?
countries or living things.
兄の名前は
Perfect. Okay, 3 of 4.
El hospital.
Okay, we've leveled up and it is time to pick another language. Morfar är tröttare än vanligt. Maten är färdig. And let's see what we're doing when we get back. Greek. We're doing Greek when we get back. Ben neredeyse her gün okula giderim. Uyum. Fun fact. Turkish. Hello, Shakespeare. How you doing? Fun fact, in Spanish, the word for bishop in chess is alfil. And that actually comes from Arabic. Fil. The same word fil as this. Meaning elephant, because the bishop traditionally was to represent elephant units somehow. Similarly, in Russian, the word for bishop is squab, and that also means elephant. Okay. 10-159. Haven't made a huge dent in it, but we're getting there. Okay, gonna do some Chinese now. Nej. Nej. Man. Igen. Jo. 5. Ducks are drinking wine. Bambas. Bamba, okay, Bambas is duck. Okay, I have now leveled up. Let's see what the XP situation is now. 10,340 out of 12,500. And as always, viewers can choose my next language for me just with a follow and a $5 to my Patreon. I buy a computer or quack, and here's another example. I like to point these out. For this word for or, quack sounds vaguely like Holden and Amarjuat Megum Prevo, Mevar Elis, Da Ak Aris Hypervolygloturad Elistan Erdada Romelshits Saubrot Enebze Da En Enebis Stavlaze. Hello and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. I'm Elise, and this is where we talk about language learning and languages, and we play games. Today it's going to be some Oxygen Not Included, because I've just been kind of obsessed with that game recently. It's kind of hard not to be. And we're gonna do some Georgian, and we're gonna just talk language stuff. Anything to do with languages that you're interested in, just jump out there. Go with it. I look forward to hearing it. Okay. Let's see. 교준 목적지 좀 시작. This is specifically sort of reputed to be kind of the easiest biome to play in Oxygen Not Included, because there's a lot to learn in it. This is part of why it's just such an addictive game. 성공, 관심.
조리, 작동, 관심, 특수복 자료, 연구, 배연구. 뭐였지? 재배, 사용, 공급. 재배, 미사일, 작동. You have to be careful who you put on here because some of them will eat you out of house and home. And slow. 정식종. Okay. Generating interest, infusing oxygen. Basically, this is like Sims, except with goofier Sims, and everything's a little bit more complicated. Let's see. Let's see. Decorating, tidying, digging, cooking. Researching, digging, doctoring. Decorating. Okay, we'll start with them. I've awoken at the target location, but colonization efforts have already hit a hitch. I was supposed to land on the planet's surface, but became trapped many miles underground instead. Although the conditions are not ideal, it's imperative that I establish a colony here and begin mounting efforts to escape. Don't know why he's English. Okay, no oxygen generator built, no outhouse built. So, first things first. Algae. That is very important stuff. Storage bin in here. Now, algae is what you power your oxygen generator with. The oxygen generator is quite important. Let's get my diagnostics of battery, beds, breathability, food. Okay, we've got no beds, which is kind of a problem. That'll be the next thing we deal with. Increase the priority of stuff so that, and that's one of the things I'm not actually all that good at yet, because I tend to put too many things on the same priority as I'm trying to raise the priority to get them done at all. Okay, we'll put everything in there. This is an everything box. Auto harvest. Enable auto harvest. Enable auto harvest. It's because otherwise they starve. In fact, sometimes they will starve, and when there's like plenty of food right there. I mean, they seem to be going on hunger strike. Let's be honest. Some copper ore. Very helpful for purposes of building oxygen generators. Can I build one yet? Yes. Power. Battery. Manual generator. Gotta connect them all. Furniture section. Get some cots in here. Actually, no, that's not. That's too close. Plumbing. And we need somebody to wash their hands because otherwise they catch diseases. This can be improved on later on. Lässt sich ja noch aufbessern. Battery indicator is green, so the oxygen generator is working. Breathability is at 100%, so that's a good start. one of the handy things is there's lots of sources of water. Water is important in this game. They don't need to drink it, apparently. But they need it to make everything else work. Hello, Paul. How old this game is? I'm actually not sure. I heard about it, because it was a recommendation from, Casey Explosion on Twitter. She has just the most amazing collection of just weird, quirky games and stuff. Great curator page on Steam. And I happily take her recommendations and occasionally play them on here. They haven't actually. Wait, the bed's right there, you know. Just falls over right by the oxygen generator. Oh, I see. I see. See, this little indicator here means it can't be built, and it can't be built because the tile needs to be built there. I just up the priority of that tile so we don't have that problem going forward. Two beds out of 3. How you doing today, Paul? You interested in languages at all? We can speed things up so they get up soon. They're getting disinfected. Frankie's getting the battery charged up again. Awesome. There we go, that's looking good. Next thing I gotta do is get a food source started. Oh, neat. What sort of retro games are you into? He's picking stuff up. There he is. Okay. Beds are all looking good. Door here. Actually, let's get the food service going. That's going to require some metal. We can always do the the pneumatic door thereafter. Oh well, cool. It's always nice when somebody likes all the stuff I do. Yeah. My latest project, language-wise, is Georgian, because it's a language that has fascinated me for a very, very long time. Well, I guess you could say my latest project is my mother wants to try out. She's been hearing me talk about the methods I've been using, and all the research that I relatively recently in my life discovered backs them up. I mean, I had arrived at these methods completely on my own, just through trial and error. And she wants to try it out, so she just decided she wants to learn Italian. So I have been putting together a little playlist for her of compelling, comprehensible Italian input on subjects she's interested in hearing about. I'm gonna up the priority of the digging on this side. What really fascinated me, for a long time I was the only one I knew. And then I started to encounter Polyglot YouTube and I realized actually there are a fair number of people who have learned a good number of languages, and they virtually all are using versions of the same sorts of approaches that I have just sort of developed through, again, just years and years of trial and error. It has not been my experience. I mean, you hear a lot about, like, the critical period and all this stuff. But what we know about the critical period is that it keeps getting, longer. Because the thing is, what researchers keep finding is that, the more that a lot of what people think of as the critical period is actually the result of going from sort of the natural language acquisition methods that one uses just by default in early childhood to the basically useless bullshit methods that that people are told to rely on are taught to rely on in school. Like, I got my start with languages quite independently of anything to do with school. Structure. That make this 8. Because that is all about breathability, and if they can't breathe, they start dying on me, and I'm really not interested in them dying on me. Fortunately, by default, they will go to the nearest accessible breathable area, and that is here. Okay. Well, I would say, I mean, and I'm not just, it's not just me saying this, like, a lot of research has said the real key to really acquiring a new language is, you want to have input that is comprehensible, that offers you sufficient points of reference that your brain can start to make sense out of it, that is compelling, it's interesting enough that you pay attention to it regardless of the fact that, you know, without even really noticing, you could say that you're listening to something in another language. And you want to just sort of expose yourself to a lot of it. Yeah, I mean, passively can make a, passively can make a difference. Actively is even better if you engage with it actively. But it's all about sort of getting your brain accustomed to this other language. Let's get that supplied, and let's get that powered. Yeah, I mean, the more interesting the stuff is to you, the less you have to, like, force yourself to deal with it, to pay attention to it. suffocating. And there we go. Get that powered up. Get it supplied. Come on, like, this is the problem with these duplicants, as they're called. They will not often listen to your priorities. Oh, come on, like, seriously. Well, the first thing is, don't really bother studying grammar. Explicit grammar study is kind of useless. What you want to do, what I would suggest, is find stuff on YouTube in Arabic that just is inherently interesting to you. Like, lately, Arabic is what I'm trying to learn as well. I want to, like, yeah, learn Palestinian Arabic. And there's a Palestinian food vlogger by the name of Basil Al-Hajj. And he has amazing videos. And so I sometimes will just kind of put those on in the background. They're always visually appealing. He's an engaging presenter. I understand maybe 10% of what's going on. Like, I understand, like, the names of food and a few other things like that. But that's basically it. Oh, that's the problem. Ah, shit. No wonder I can't get them to do anything about it. There was missing a tile. Speed this up. Yeah. There's all sorts of stuff on Arabic YouTube. There's also just Al Jazeera Arabic. I watch that a fair bit as well. Ah, here we go, finally. Okay, now we've got to actually get people to supply this. Oh yeah, you definitely need to learn the script. Learning the script is really a key thing. I did not mean to max priority that. It just defaulted to that. Oh, well, I mean, you don't have to so much unlearn it. The more you get used to the fact, the more you get used to the structures of the words, because the thing about Semitic languages, like Arabic, like Hebrew as well, like Aramaic, is the way they work is entirely based on consonant combinations. You'll have these collections of consonants, and depending on what vowels you add to them, you get different types of meanings that are all related. Like, you have kitab, kaf, taba, book, but then maktaba is like an office, maktub means written, aktab, I write, and stuff like that. And it's these and how the vowels and consonants go together. And so you just get used to that. So as sort of an initial sort of learning aid, it can be very useful to have the explicit vowels written out and everything. Okay, we've got more plants. Able auto harvest. Auto harvest is important because then they will just go and eat the stuff. I've been studying Arabic off and on for a very long time. The trouble I've always had with it is precisely the lack of the explicit vowels. I hadn't noticed that your typing was sucking. I'm understanding you just fine. Don't worry about it. By the way, I don't know. I posted about it on the Discord, but might as well mention it here as well. Poly people got permabanned off Twitch over some just bullshit. So she's now streaming over at over on YouTube, and so trying to signal boost hers, and like she had a big following over on Twitch, and now all of a sudden she's just lost all of that. Just all of a sudden, I mean, she'd done everything right on Twitch, and it didn't matter. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's definitely way easier. I mean, it's the same thing with Hebrew as well. When they have the explicit vowels, it helps. Helps a lot. Okay. Get a research station going. Is all the good stuff involves research. good people. And it's just absolute bullshit what they did with her, did to her on Twitch. So I'm trying to get the word out. Oh, damn it. No. Pause. Pause is a very useful thing here. Wait, there's a yellow alert? What's the yellow alert for? There we go. And let's just run the storage bin in there. Okay. One thing I learned, I put all these storage bins in there and nobody was putting anything in them for various of my first few builds of colonies. And what I learned was apparently if you don't actually, you have to enable the storage bin. You have to say what goes in there, essentially. Oh, so that wire. Gotta deal with that wire. Yeah, she had her first stream on YouTube just yesterday, and I mean, considering that the whole thing was totally unplanned, no advanced publicity or anything like that, I mean, it wasn't bad. But compared to what she gets on Twitter, it was nothing because nobody was expecting her to be there. So, trying to signal boost even the and well, I don't have all that much of a platform either. Okay, so let's do some basic farming. Oh, Hassan earned the skill point. Somehow, whenever I see that phrase, somehow all the names seem to be, nearly all of them are like 2 syllables. So I hear, Hassan earned a skill point to the tune of the Tupac song, Brenda Got a Baby. Marie earned a skill point. Let's give her some researching skills. Yeah, I mean, I've managed to do pretty well. I mean, I'm up to like 230 subs on here, and this is the slowest growing one. I've been playing around with format for a while on here. That would not surprise me. One thing I've found is that if you actually put the name of the person you're having a go at in the name of in the title of your video, it makes a big it actually, you end up doing quite a bit in the way of numbers. No research focus selected. Means we've actually achieved a research goal. Okay, so what have we got? Food. Get ration boxes. Okay. And it's home to some planter boxes. We can agricult the place up. New principles are available. Okay, I can add some more skills. Oh, Frankie's got some skill points. Let's give him some farming. Okay, someone who can dig and farm. That's a nice combo. Slow this down. The Delicate Cesspool is the automatic name I got for this. Okay, digging. Take this. 7. Construction. Also 7. We haven't actually got the jumbo battery yet. Almost there. No, I want to furniture. I need it there. adjust the priority on this digging. Oh, time for a new research. Yeah. Definitely not wrong there. This is my I should note, this is sort of my less spicy stream. I have where I try to keep it mostly language related. Need as many wash basins as there are outhouses. Occasionally, your duplicants lose their shit. Breathability is down. Okay, that needs to be adjusted. Now everybody goes to sleep, and I'm going to speed them up so we don't have to watch them sleep too long, although they are very cute when they sleep. Veramente dolci. Ah, good. There, that harvesting happened. Yeah, I mean, they all make very cute sense. I mean, this is one of the reasons I really like Casey Explosion's recommendations. There are lots of really cute messages in there. I mean, lots of really cute sounds. I mean, she has, like, two kinds of games that she recommends. Some are just really hardcore, like, action horror sort of things, which are invariably excellent. And then, the others are just really cute and quirky and interesting. Okay, time to start adjusting power sources. We now have the jumbo battery. And another wash basin. Okay, adjusting digging priorities. Well, let's get some more oxygen. Okay, enjoy the walking of the crazy dog. I know the feeling. There is a very demanding little Ewok dog here. Impressively opportunist. Okay, digging. We'll adjust that priority. Actually, okay, no, we're gonna adjust the construction here. Oh, hang on. Actually need to connect the power. No research focus selected. Time to adjust that. Meal prep. That'll be an important one. Okay. There, breathability is on its way up. Priorities, construction. fast. Okay. Fertigkeiten. Druckbare. Baupause auswählen. Und ein Biestchen. Und ja. Fliesenleg, Fliesenleg, Fliesenleg. Okay. Stromsrichtung. Luft ist ja unmessbar. Das soll geändert werden. Ja, darauf geht's ja auch hinaus. Prioritäten setzen. Beschleunigung. Unrefrigerated food. Well, I haven't invented refrigeration yet. Of course the food's not refrigerated. Claro. Super compu. Acá. Potencia. Ahí. Poco a poco se va avanzando. Ahora bien, vamos a contar agua contaminada. Análisis. Cama. Ah. So. Ah, shit. Ceiling collapse? Where? Motoren. Und war mal cool. Oh, welcome back. Yeah, I like the sounds. I like the visuals, too. Just managed to figure out how to get the duplicates to stop starving when they're actually surrounded by food. Ooh, we got fridges. Oh, that's very good to know. It's fridge time. We've got fridges. Power. And we need more research. time for a harvest. And some skill points. Okay, in a minute I'm gonna take a little bio break and then we're gonna change gears and do some look at some languagey video things. As soon as they finish building. It's fridges. Excellent. What cycle are we on? Cycle 14, not bad. Okay. Save. Okay, I will be back in just a few minutes. Gonna just take a quick bio break. See you shortly.
Perfect. Okay, 3 of 4.
El hospital.
Okay, we've leveled up and it is time to pick another language. Morfar är tröttare än vanligt. Maten är färdig. And let's see what we're doing when we get back. Greek! We're doing Greek when we get back. Ben neredeyse her gün okula gidelim. Fun fact. Turkish. Hello, Shakespeare. How you doing? Fun fact, in Spanish, the word for bishop in chess is alfil. And that actually comes from Arabic. Fil. The same word fil as this. Meaning elephant, because the bishop traditionally was to represent elephant units somehow. Similarly, in Russian, the word for bishop is sword, and that also means elephant. Okay. 10-159. Haven't made a huge dent in it, but we're getting there. Okay, gonna do some Chinese now. Nej. Nej. Man. Igen. Jo. 5. Ducks are drinking wine. Bambas. Bamba, okay, Bambas is duck. Okay, I have now leveled up. Let's see what the XP situation is now. 10,340 out of 12,500. And as always, viewers can choose my next language for me just with a follow and a $5 to my Patreon. I buy a computer or quack, and here's another example. I like to point these out. For this word for or, quack sounds vaguely like Hogun and the hok in Hogun in Korean or waku in Japanese, and that appears it is the exact same kind of character. Oh, I see. This is Diche Ishai Pui, which means, do you want food? But, yeah, are you hungry? That kind of thing. How are the boys? Cine da Borgia. Posso Milao. Pote. Buenese. Proteine. Udros. Protopulo. In the designated chicken-eating area, obviously.
Leave.
Monsieur.
See.
Livre. Liwe livla. Maciej. Yeah. Si. Wysoki. Maciej. Proč? Inte. Počkej. A. Si.
Oilen coginio panas.
Jacob. Hefed.
Okay.
Hefed.
Okay.
Hefed. Hefed. Hek. 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 Mwalimu.
This is Arabic. And it's from Mu'allim.
Juma ni mwalimu mke.
Oh, thanks to cat sons. Meow and the pictures of the fish. That's they were proud.
Sööpä. Kupu. Yrittävät. Uraista. Omena.
Are in the city center. Okay, and I'm back. Okay, see you later. Hope to see you tonight then. Thanks for joining us. And we're gonna just change gears and we're gonna look at some languagey stuff. Figure out what we're going to look at. Как я быстро учу языки. Опыт американца, выучившего русский. That could be interesting. How to actually learn a language in a month. Okay. Look at days and words. I like what days
Learn
and
a
words
language
puts out
with
there.
great TV.
Stellen Sie sich vor, Sie
My name is Ella. I'm used to just learning math, head down, and watch a lot of YouTube. Brilliant is different.
So you want to know whether it would be possible to learn a language in a month, and even better, how. Plenty of people claim to have done it. Some make even bigger claims. 7 days, 6 days, 24 hours, 7 days again, 7 minutes. Learn a language in your sleep. Learning a language I didn't even want to learn. Now among this melee of information, misinformation, clickbait and straight up lies, there is good news and bad news and some more bad news and finally good news, but we'll get to all that. In order to make a good attempt at answering this question, we need to be clear on a few definitions. Firstly, possible. Possible and likely are two very different things. It's possible that with enough training I could run 10 kilometers in under 40 minutes. Lots of people my age do it all the time. However, it's not likely that I will carry out the necessary training to do so.
Yes. Now, of course, with languages, fortunately, it is generally it can be a lot less strenuous than that. Now, in 1 month, it will be interesting to see. Apparently, he's had to go with this, so we'll see how that works out.
I will say, I mean, I've only been working on Georgian in earnest for a couple of months, and I already understand. I'm not gonna say a lot. Certainly, way more than I did when I went into it. Because when I would started out, it was like I knew Gamarjoba, Rogorkhar, Karga, and stuff like that. Like basically nothing. In short, basically nothing. And now I actually, I can turn on a Georgian video, and at the very least, I will occasionally get entire sentences. And, if I read, I definitely, if I'm reading something that is on a subject I know something about and have the vocabulary for, then, I can possibly get, in some cases, 50 or even more % comprehension of what I'm reading. And I understand a fair bit when I'm listening and stuff, and I can actually manage to say things, not a whole lot of things, admittedly. But what I do, it comes out, and it comes out quite smoothly. I mean, and that's what I would call a hard case. There are languages that would be easy cases. A language that is closely related to something you already know would be an easy case. Georgian is not closely related to much of anything that people know outside of Georgia. And it has all sorts of grammatical and syntactical and lexical complications, not to mention the pronunciation, which is complicated, that you won't find in a lot of other places. Certainly not if you're an Indo-European speaker. You won't find that. You won't find much of that. I mean, the closest is you can find some sort of spicy consonant combinations in Russian, but even those don't really compare to what you deal with in Georgian. But, so that is what I would call a hard case, because you are really having to start very close to from scratch. And I would say, a month, for something really, for an easy case, for something closely related to something you already know, that is, I mean, under optimum circumstances, not impossible.
Possible, very. Likely, no. See the difference? Good. Now to the definition of month. Lamont, you joker. Everyone knows a month is 30 days. Yeah, but actually, no, because it's not. The majority of months are 31 days. Some are 30, and then there's just February. Also, have you considered the relationship between the word moon and the word month?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are a lot of different ways to describe a month. And, which calendar are you even using?
You haven't, well, you should. This is also where we get the word honeymoon, like the month of honey, I guess, which is a lot more subtle than the Swedish, which calls a honeymoon a caressing month. Yeah, the Swedes don't mess about with this stuff. Anyway, a month. How long is it? It's 40 days. Whoa. You just mentioned the moon, and now you're saying that a month is 12 days longer than the lunar cycle? Yeah, I am. You see, humans aren't actually very good at intuitively sensing time. Measuring it, yeah, we can measure it.
Okay, I mean, this is an interesting start this is getting off to. I mean, I'm curious where he's going with this, apart from, obviously, trying to extend the concept of a month in order to increase the likelihood of what I would have to say, as somebody who's learned a fair number of languages, has worked out methods that are very well tailored to me and are quite effective for me. I don't think I've ever actually managed to learn any language in that short a time, but I've never tried. I've never trying to I work to a clock or anything like that.
Super accurately, sometimes, but actually feeling the length of things, we suck at that. Say your friend leaves for a holiday on July 27th, and the next time you see them is on the night of September 4th. That's about a month, right? Yeah, it's about a month, in that it's 40 days. Also, I had to check what a month was considered to be before the extra months were added, because I assumed that they had to be longer, right? No, they were actually lunar months back then, but get this, there were like 70 days of winter that just weren't called anything.
Okay.
Okay, sure. So anyway, our month is 40 days long, deal with it. So now we have to answer the much trickier question of just what it means to learn a language. Now I have been a bit cunning when it comes to what a month is, but I'm not going to do that for this part, which is where most people hide the rabbit. Mainly because hiding the rabbit is boring. People say if you can make yourself understood in a language, then you can speak it.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where we get into one of the most complicated things, and this is something like a lot of people, particularly people who really don't have much experience with learning languages, certainly with learning them successfully, they don't get, is that what does it mean to speak a language? Like that is not a simple question.
Boring! I can make myself understood in like 8 languages, and in most languages we could all learn to do this in about 3 days.
Yeah, I could probably make myself understood at some level or another in probably something like 40. Now, I'm not saying that I will understand in all of them what comes back after I've made myself understood, and I'm not saying it will be, like, eloquent, it won't be flash, but, yeah, I mean, if we mean I can say at least a few, cobble together something resembling a well-formed sentence that people will understand, yeah, I mean, I could probably make myself understood at least a little bit in 40 languages. I would never say I speak them.
Because it's just not that hard to make yourself understood. Now we're going to come back to this,
exactly.
But I'm going to use a much stricter definition of speaking a language. Speaking a language is the ability to, in most situations, have 40% of what you hear and say be comfortably comprehensible for all parties. Put simply, more than 40%...
Okay, I mean, that's still not setting the bar hugely high here. I mean, more than 40, that's still not most of what's being said.
Of the time, what you're hearing and what you need to say feels comfortable both for you and the people you're speaking to, rather than feeling uncomfortable for one or both of you. This means that even if you happen to be a confident person who's just comfortable...
Oh, well, comfortably comprehensible. I forgot to take that adverb into account. That's an important adverb. Because comfortably, if it's a 40% comfortably comprehensible, that means some uncertain percentage of that remaining 60% might be comprehensible, but not quite comfortably so.
Well, sounding like an idiot, what you say still needs to be clear enough that the person you're speaking to is also comfortable. You're allowed to make mistakes, you're allowed to clarify things, but it all counts to your linguistic aggregate. If you're not comfortable saying, "How do I say this properly?" then you're going to dent your average a lot. But if you just stay silent because you don't have the language to express yourself, then you're not linguistically comfortable in that moment.
Yeah, indeed.
So that counts as well. If either party is confused for linguistic reasons for 6 or more of every 10 seconds, you don't speak the language. It's actually quite a high standard. If you don't like my definition, then I don't really care, because all definitions of speaking a language are pretty arbitrary.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. And this is one of the things I appreciate about Days and Words, because he goes into this stuff. So many people will say, like, you speak a language. Like, somebody who doesn't know Georgian at all would hear the way I did the intro for this stream today, and they'd be like, "Oh wow, she speaks fucking Georgian." And I mean, according to a very, very low standard, I guess, like, I can say a fair number of things now, almost all to do with food or chess, admittedly. I mean, but I mean, I can say or something like that. You can guess what else I'm using as comprehensible input. But you already saw I that did not come out very flashly. But the thing, and somebody who is like a native Georgian speaker would also probably hear that and be like, "Holy shit!" Because the expectation is low. what they would not entirely automatically realize is that there would be a real drop-off after that.
Including the CEFR standards, which seem clear when you read them, but when you've actually experienced those levels, you realize that, if you need to know what this level would be on that scale, we're talking somewhere around B2. But B2 is one big, slightly different colored area in the eternal grey desert that is speaking a language. B1 is actually pretty easy in a bunch of languages, and C1 is a whole different ballgame that is widely accepted as being well and truly fluent, so we're left with B2 and 40 days to get there. So now we have our target and we have our time period. Let's make it simple, and by that I mean overly simple, like simplistic even. A Google search of how many hours it takes to learn a language throws back the result.
I mean, and let's just also know, we're talking speaking. Now, sometimes people will say speak, and they also mean, they're including like listening, reading, writing, and stuff. And other people will say speak, and they mean sort of purely the oral use of the language. And that, there are just so many definitional difficulties. So, I appreciate the specification here.
According to FSI research, it takes around 480 hours of practice to reach basic
Around 480 hours?
fluency in all Group 1 languages.
480 hours over 40 days is 12 hours a day. Well, that's neat, that's doable, fair enough. But what's this Group 1 languages jargon?
Actually.
Well, it basically means easy languages. These are
like Afrikaans. Oh, here we go, Georgian.
normally
Georgian, they say 2 years. Afrikaans, 1.7 years. I see here, I would have possibly set that considerably lower. Because the nice thing about Afrikaans is the grammar is actually really, really simple.
as being languages similar to the
Wait a second. 2.1 years for German and 2 years for Georgian? I call bullshit. Georgian is way harder if you're starting from English. It is way more complicated. As complicated as German is, and I know German has a reputation there. Georgian is way harder. Like, the verbs are so much more complicated because they, conjugate in all sorts of directions that you'd never think of. So, what sort of fluency are we talking about in Georgian that you could imagine in 2 years, and it would take a tenth of a year longer in German?
Already speak, but as you can see, that's not the only factor. Now I just want
to... And then Indonesian is longer? And Khmer?
mention that while a lot of people cite the FSI both on number of hours to learn a language and difficulty of languages for English speakers, it's far from being a holy text, because when you check various versions of it, you see that some languages skip around the different groups.
Yeah,
some languages are marked with
I really question what we mean by fluency with these particular, time estimates. Because I can't imagine a universe in which a language like Khmer has difficulties. I've tried to learn it. I know very, very little. I can say Soksabai Jiate Hnyom Nie Ban Piasak Mai Bon Touch Bon Tuich. I can say little things like that. You have the writing system to deal with. The writing system is complex, and there are no spaces between words, which makes it more complex. You're also, once again, dealing with sort of a non-Indo-European language, but on the other hand, grammatically, it's all very analytic. You don't have huge numbers of agglutinations. So I would still think, honestly, Khmer would probably... I'm surprised to see that would take substantially longer than Georgian, unless the standard is really low for Georgian.
random caveats saying that they're actually a bit harder than their buddies, and
Georgian is a bit harder than their buddies. That's cute. That's very cute. Georgian is a bit harder. No, it's not a bit harder. It is qualitatively different. Okay, Finnish, Estonian. Okay, Finnish I'm actually pretty decent at. Finnish I can read quite well, and I can pronounce it pretty well as well. Finnish has the difficulty, it is not Indo-European, it has a lot of non-Indo-European word roots naturally as a result. There's a sort of a steep learning curve in terms of getting the base vocabulary and stuff like that. And you've got to deal with like declensions and things. I mean, Estonian is a little bit less of that, is my understanding. But I mean, Georgian is on a different level. Because the thing about Finnish and Estonian is they have simple syllable structure. You know, it tends to be vowel consonant sort of thing. You know, sometimes a long vowel, sometimes a short vowel, whatever. Georgian is like, you can have like 6 consonants in a row and then 1 vowel, and that's a syllable.
Even the number of groups has dropped from 5 to 4. Suffice to say, it's a guide, and a very rough one at that. There's a whole bunch of important detail that it doesn't go into, and for the sake of brevity, Norway...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as Jack Stewart points out in Japanese in Action, really old book, very dated, a lot of stuff in it didn't age well, but as an introduction to the difficulties of learning Japanese and stuff, not terrible. Wait, Croatian, Polish, and Czech are almost twice as long as Georgian? No fucking way. I call bullshit. There's absolutely no way. But the thing is, it says you're getting to the same level of fluency, but it doesn't really say what level you're getting to at the end of this period.
Will I? Now the bad news is that there are more languages in categories 3 and 4 than in categories 1 and 2. So no, you're not going to...
What, Greek longer than Turkish? Twice as long as Georgian? Yeah, like, where the hell are they getting this?
Be fluent in Uzbek 40 days from now. Sorry if I got your hopes up. The good news is that there's a good chance that you're more interested in French, Spanish, Italian, German, and they're a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, of course there are those of us who immediately say, wow, polysynthetic in Caucasian language with polypersonal verbs and massive consonant clusters, sign me up. Like, literally, that and Georgian wine are the 2 reasons I got interested.
I mean, they're still hard, but easier. But the next part is good news, sort of, because there are actually more than 12 hours in a day. 3 more, by my count. That's 15 hours a day. It'd be obvious to say 16, because 24 minus 8, but if you're seriously doing this, like for real, you're going to need an extra hour's sleep. Ideally, you're having a long sleep at night and a siesta.
Yeah.
Or if you...
I mean, I would say rest is going to be important even if you're not strictly speaking sleeping.
You're not learning Spanish, a nana nap. And this brings us to the first major obstacle here, which is maximum acceleration. You see, my sneakily adding 9 days to the month was even more sneaky than you thought, because everything you try to learn or remember has to fit within a framework. If I tell you that the capital of Scotland is Edinburgh, even if you had believed it to be Glasgow, it's going to be very easy for you to overwrite that with the new information, because you have an existing framework for Scotland, and you've at least heard of Edinburgh, hopefully, so you're just reorganizing things within the framework. But when you start out in a language, you don't have much of a framework, and so generally the most efficient way is to piggyback off a language you already know. But this is still slow and far from ideal, and the upshot is that until you're really quite competent, you're going to learn...
We're looking at Days and Words video on how to actually learn a language in a month, and so far I was just sort of balking at the Foreign Service Institute's ideas about how long it takes to take various languages, which somehow, incomprehensibly, I absolutely cannot make sense of it. Has it taking twice as long to reach whatever magical unspecified level of fluency the FSI relies on in Greek than in fucking Georgian? And there's absolutely no way. That immediately makes me question their entire framework.
The language with increasing...
But I like Days and Words. Days and Words has pretty sound ideas here, and is also dealing with some of the complexities a lot of people really don't realize exist about, yeah, well, this is, if you just tuned in, I'm gonna drop a link to this video, because he actually gets into that. It gets into, how he's defining it, because the definition is complicated. Like, he's saying what his definition was being able to make oneself understood and understand others comfortably about 40% of the time. That's the standard he's using. I mean, people use all sorts of different standards. I use a fairly high standard for myself. But that's what he's going for in this. He's also defining a month as 40 days.
Efficiency the longer you do it for, which means that assuming you do the proposed 465 hours in the first 31 days, the 9 days after that should be as effective as the first 31, if not more so. So for the first...
Okay, so the idea here, and this is something I definitely agree with. Once you if you're starting from scratch on a language, and this is assuming you're starting from scratch on a language, you've got a lot of framework stuff you've got to work out. You've got to understand the sounds, you've got to sort of map those in your mind to the writing. You got to understand like the framework of the language, how sentences are structured, what order they go in. You know, like lots of really basic stuff. That once you know that, it becomes much easier to build on it, because after that you're just learning like new words and expressions and things like that and getting used to them. So yeah, I would agree. There tends to be a cumulative effect.
First 2 or 3 weeks, 15 hours a day is going to be really hard, like just grueling. And the last 19 days, well,
starting from
no, actually, yeah, similar. Equally grueling. Just
like if you start as a native speaker of Dutch, I would not be I think in 40 days you could get close enough in Afrikaans to, if you had the optimum input, the best resources and stuff like that, and really had a proper go at it, I think you could probably get to a level where you could at the very least confuse native speakers in Afrikaans, at least temporarily. Because there's so much there's so much overlap between them.
Just horrible, and yeah. Which brings us to the question of what you will actually have to do. Here's the part where I justify the outlandish video title by informing the unwashed masses of something that the masses need to hear because they're ignorant in their unwashed massiveness.
Are you hearing the video okay? Is the video audio coming out well?
There's very little difference between knowing a language and speaking a language. Staying on the theme of Scotland, have you ever heard a Scottish person say I can, where we normal people would say I know? Well, that finds its roots in Old Norse, where to this day Scandinavians express knowledge of a language as to can a language. To know, to can, to be able to speak, they're thought of as pretty interchangeable in a good number of the world's languages, and with good reason. There's a myth among people who have not seriously learned a foreign language that you can understand the language on a profound level and actually know it very well, and even be able to tell if one little thing is out of place because you know it so damn well. But when you go to speak, the little people jump in your mouth and tie up your tongue, and there must be some pill that you can take to stop.
Yeah, there is what's called the silent period. And it's this thing, if you're like serious about trying to learn a language, it's something you just got to accept. It exists. It exists in every language that a person ever acquires, including their first one. And it takes a long time for things to build up in your brain so that you can really comfortably, spontaneously express yourself orally in the language. It's on a different schedule for different people. It depends on a lot of factors, but you should expect that you can't just immediately be speaking right off the bat.
The people tying up your tongue, because that's the only problem, right? Wrong. Yes, of course, it can be difficult to clearly articulate your thoughts in any language. You think these videos write themselves? They don't. Yeah. Support me on Patreon. But mostly, if you can't find words in a foreign language, it's because you don't know the language well enough. When you
What languages have you been interested in learning so far? That was a very weird phrasing.
Spend time learning to know the language, to understand it, predict its patterns, and truly be able to hear when something
sure
sounds
I've
off,
gotten that
you
from.
realize that speaking it is relatively simple. So how do you spend most of the month? Learning to know the language. And that brings us to
Exactly. I mean, okay, this is also a very important point. I mean, sorry. A lot of people don't get that, you know, a lot of people have this idea that reading and speaking are like these separate things, and you have to do, and what you do in terms of learning to read the language has nothing to do, and listen to the language somehow does not connect to speaking it. And it's not true. Actually, like, I mean, these sort of passive methods are all sort of, I think it was actually Days and Words who used this phrase. Maybe not, but it was a good one. Creating a space the shape of your target language in your brain. And once that space is there, and the more, like, fully articulated that space becomes, yeah, that is totally going to have an impact on your speaking. Oh, very cool.
second major obstacle. See, although at 15 hours a day for 40 days,
like, Chinese is one I can read quite well. I have some trouble with the listening and the speaking because I just don't get a chance to do it much.
we'll actually hit an impressive 600 hours of exposure to the language. That's not going to matter as much as how much of that 600 hours you can actually understand. And
Yeah.
this is a catch-22. How do you increase your comprehension when you don't yet have any? Well,
And I'll say what I do. I would not be surprised if he has very similar ideas here. Because the thing about comprehension is there are lots of ways to get it. I mean, you can comprehend the words, but somebody misspelled amount there. Amount with two M's. What's the deal there? So, okay. That distracted me. God, what the hell was I just about to say? Okay, but say the visuals, for example, can actually make up for the gaps in the comprehension that you have of the words that you're hearing. Like, if I'm doing a thing and explaining it to you in Italian, for example, then you can still see me do the thing. You can assume that I must be talking about doing the thing, and you can start from there.
you cheat, obviously, like I did with my definition.
Actually, it misspelled amount twice on that thing.
In a world where women's sports is being
Of a month. All that you need be concerned with in the first 500 hours is
Okay, that seemed like actually possibly a seriously transphobic ad right there. So, I mean, how the hell do you report ads on YouTube?
percentage of the language you understand, even if
I mean, first they make it impossible to use ad block. Even if you're creating content at the time on their platform and thus potentially actually contributing to their profits. And then they're gonna have some transphobic ads on there? Fuck that.
if you are boosting that artificially. We're talking about things like getting a series of conversations or short stories in, let's say, Spanish, and listening to them along with the English translation until...
He clearly likes the Millennium Trilogy, and I'm there for it. I actually quite like it as well. I have the second book of
you
that
can
in
remember the
Icelandic.
ideas that were expressed in the whole conversation, and then listening to and reading along only in Spanish until you've all but memorized the Spanish as well. It might sound unrealistic, but if you were to do this with 100 conversations that are each a minute long, you'd actually end up with the basics of Spanish nicely solidified in your subconscious.
See, I don't know about the memorizing part, but letting it wash over you. And, I mean, see, there are two, levels of engagement as far as I'm concerned. Two basic levels. I guess you could probably get more specific if you wanted to, with input. And there's the passive engagement, where you're not really engaging so much as you've just got it on in the background, and it's, you're hearing it. Maybe you're, listening a little bit, but you're not really actively trying to make sense out of it. You're not actually actively watching it and stuff, but it's there. And that definitely has its utility, because you get used to how the language sounds. You get used to the rhythms of it. Maybe you even get used to hearing some of the patterns of how the speech works, how the words work, and stuff like that. And then there's the more active engagement, where you're actually sitting there, you're watching whatever it is, you're really trying to understand it. And you're going to get more out of that, but you're not going to get nothing out of the passive approach.
At an average of 10 conversations per day for 50 minutes per conversation, you'd be spending 8.5 hours a day doing this and would complete...
Yeah, that is a thing that that is an issue a lot of people have. And, I mean, I think what it comes down to, the more you create this space that is shaped like the language in your head, the more input you get, the more exposure you get, the more you just get used to being around the language, the less that happens. That happens as sort of an initial stopgap measure to try to make sense.
100 conversations in 10 days. In the remaining hours of those first 10 days, you do something like repeated listening of audiobooks with which you're already familiar, reading...
Yeah, that definitely helps. I mean, it doesn't always have to be new material. Like, one of the things that really helped me with Japanese, actually, was I had these VHS tapes of Japanese dubbed episodes of The X-Files my host family sent me back in the 90s as gifts. And I would watch those things all the time until I got to a point where I actually kind of could recite the script. I mean, some of it, I can still recite at least some of this dialogue, because I heard it so many times. And the result of that is that I just got used to, I actually managed to create that level of listening comprehension. And of course, it also then becomes available for speaking. Yeah, I mean, like, one of my favorite things is to get an audiobook and the ebook and just read along as you're listening to it. I mean, that has helped me a lot with my, Afrikaans listening. I have a bunch of Irma Venter and Deon Meyer detective novels with the audiobooks, and I just sit there and I've got that on, and I've got the books, and I just listen to them.
Along if possible, and probably some spaced repetition. Oh, and in case you're wondering when you're supposed to eat, and, well, yeah, basically just eat, it's while you're listening to the audiobooks. You will need to be exposed to the target language.
Yeah, I mean, having the stuff on in the background totally... Yeah, it is totally useful.
Every waking minute, and no, I don't think that listening in your sleep will make any difference. Your brain will already be...
Although listening yourself to sleep can make a difference.
Seriously processing everything it's being exposed to. So I would at this point say don't overdo it, but, well, it's pretty clear that we're already overdoing it.
Yeah, I mean, this is overdoing it. I would not actually necessarily recommend this, because I think one really key thing is breaks. Rest. Because at a certain point, you will find that you're just sort of forcing yourself. Sometimes. I mean, maybe you find just absolutely ideal input, and you just love it, and you can't get enough of it. And that's a good thing. I mean, then you've hit a seam. But I mean, a lot of the time, you get bored with it, you get frustrated with it, and when you're feeling that you're having to force yourself to push on, that is a good time to go and do something completely different.
Now, the details of exactly what to do, when and how much to look up words, how much spaced repetition, etc. greatly depend on the language in question and you as a person. So what happens after 10 days? Well, you're only a quarter of the way there, so you'd pretty much just rinse and repeat, except hopefully you'll have access to more complex and longer conversations to do the same thing with. Assuming you've found a suitable audiobook, one that you already...
Fatta eld. Balladen av sångfåglar och ormar. See, I mean, this is another example of the stuff of a very useful thing that I do a lot. Because this is Hunger Games in Swedish. And what I have done, one of my main methods, actually, of getting that input in a large number of languages has been, I take a book I know very well, that I enjoy, I can read it over and over again. I know it practically by heart. Like, if you give me a dialogue prompt, I will be able to tell you what's going on in the scene to a great extent. And I find it in my target language. So I have, like, it's John Grisham's The Firm is the main one. I have that in, like, 18, 19, maybe more than that languages. And since I already know what's going on, I know who the characters are, I know the plot of the thing, I can focus on how things are being said. And early on, I focused just on the dialogue. Don't worry about the narration, because the narration is more complicated and it's longer. The dialogue is more bite-sized, and you can generally you do a lot better in there. You have much more chance of actually making sense out of it.
You know the story of, which contains suitable language, you'll be listening to each chapter 10 to 12 times before moving on, so one book should keep you going for a while. At the end of 20 days, you'll have pretty well internalized 200 conversations, listened to and hopefully read along with a medium-sized audiobook 10 times over, and learned about 500 words in spaced repetition. But you might...
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I would actually suggest that can often also work really well, this is something that I'm doing with Georgian, is how-to videos. Like, on stuff you actually are interested in, on stuff that actually matters to you. Like, mine in Georgian have been chess and cookery. Two things I enjoy a lot. I mean, and if you get good stuff, if you get stuff that is visually impactful, that, you know, they speak very clearly and stuff, then you can actually get quite a lot of it. I mean, I've learned a lot of Georgian just from, like, chess videos and one chess book. One chess book that I should say, too, if they're going to be putting out another edition of Shevitsablo Chadraki, then you should really, really check those, notation of some of those games in the section on openings, because there are definitely things in there that, that are wrong. The thing on the Scotch game, wrong. There are a couple of moves that they're typos. I had to go look them up, because there was no way that the game could progress in that way, because there was no piece to move in the particular way. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I spent like 20 minutes over coffee trying to figure out what the move was actually supposed to be in this book. But like, my mother has decided to do an experiment. She's going to try this, the input sort of based approaches. And so she asked me to put together some material to listen to and expose herself to in Italian on various subjects of interest to her. And so I've been creating, it's mostly cookery videos, specifically ones with good visuals, good photography, something that is pleasing to the eye, because it's just easier to watch that way. And then other stuff, like she wanted to have a video on how to cut your hair in a bob. So I got that, and a bunch of other stuff, and then just some background music. And so she's going to be trying that out. Tips for writing? Well, I mean, writing is complicated, because you have to actually have something to write. That really helps, but, I mean, the best thing, your writing will get really good in just any language if you are reading a lot. Pleasure reading plays a major role, like, in good writing. So I would do quite a lot. I would read a lot. That is really key.
Understand something more like 1,000 words, or if the language is close to your own, 2,000 words.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets interesting, because sometime around now, you'll hit a sudden spike in comprehension, and the speed at which you learn will greatly increase. And I mean...
Yeah, because the more you understand out of a thing you initially did not understand, the more it becomes possible to understand, because suddenly now these bits are accessible. These bits that were like surrounded by stuff you didn't understand, now they're surrounded by stuff you do understand, and that makes it that much easier to make sense out of them.
Like, greatly, which means a lot. You'll probably also find that what you do at this stage is more intuitive. You'll just know what's effective and what's not, and the micro-processes that your brain undertakes in order to decode the language are happening far more frequently and to greater effect. It might be at day 14, it might be at day 27, but a sharp increase in effectiveness will occur. By now you should be able to listen to a normal conversation or audiobook and get at least the gist of what's going on, and
Yeah, and this is the key, at least especially in the early stages with any materials, any input you're using, whether it's written, whether it's videos, whether it's audiobooks, music, whatever. Don't worry about the finer points, but if you can get the gist, you're doing well. I mean, this is what's called extensive reading. Intensive reading is where you try to get all the finer bits. But extensive reading is you're just trying to make general sense out of what's going on and not bothering too much about the flasher stuff. Now, I have no idea whether this would work. Whether this method would work for this short a time. I've never attempted to learn something that quickly. I've never really set a deadline for myself like that. But I don't know, so I have absolutely no way of verifying that this timeline is realistic. It's saying this as somebody who has learned a lot of languages, this seems strenuous as hell, actually. It might be shifting because you're around different accents. I mean, that happens to me. Where are you based, if you don't mind my asking?
Depending on some of the aforementioned factors, maybe even quite a lot of detail. At this point, you just keep doing the same things but with more breadth and less repetition. This time you might be listening to 10 longer conversations 4 or 5 times each, and each chapter of a new audiobook just a few times. You're still doing spaced repetition,
Harry Potter och den förbannade töfen.
And you're still streaming the language through your eyes and ears, or both, at all times. And we've reached day 30. Most people's incorrect idea of a full month, and you might be wondering when you're actually going to speak. Well, we'll get to that, but think about what you've achieved by this point. The amount of language you've been exposed to.
See, the speaking part is really one of the big wild cards in this, because, I mean, why it takes a certain amount of time for the silent period to be overcome or not is one of the things, to my knowledge, researchers haven't really completely worked out. We just know that people have a silent period. It can take a different amount of times, and there's a lot of individual factors in there.
Is coming pretty close to the FSI's lower figures for basic fluency in a Group 1 language. It's a flawed number for a bunch of reasons, but even if every factor is against you, you've definitely now got some decent ability in a language that was foreign to you just 30 days ago. So now you'll start to transfer some of that subconscious ability to active ability through speaking, but not speaking to a person. Having a real conversation in which you have to do all the things that you would normally do during a conversation is actually a terrible way to practice, because a large amount of your cognition is used up with matters separate to the language. It'd be like trying to learn to hit a baseball while explaining the rules of baseball to someone else. They're entirely different activities and should be practiced separately. Therefore, you're going to instead mimic existing conversations and passages from your target language. What you choose to practice is up to you.
In fact, I mean, I tend to, when I'm listening to something in a target language, often my experience, I actually will call out, like, the words that I'm understanding and just kind of say them.
But remembering our 40% comfort rule, the more the situations can reflect your life, the better. It's also best if it's material you've already been exposed to, because that way you're activating subconscious knowledge rather than trying to learn new language.
Yeah.
At this stage,
I mean, a lot of the time, I mean, this is why the how-to stuff works really well, and, you know, especially how-to on a subject that you know about and care about and actually are reasonably good at. Like, the chess book that I'm learning Georgian with right now is a book I mostly could have just written, because it is absolute beginner stuff, and it's been a very long time since I was an absolute beginner. Like, it's all stuff I know. So it's just taking concepts that you already know and applying your target language to them. That gives you something much more solid to work with.
You're not going for perfection in accent. You're just priming your brain to the task of
Very
taking
cool.
the language you've fed it and moving your mouth to produce that. To repeat, producing a new language does carry some difficulty, but mostly it's a lack of knowledge and understanding of how the language works
Oh God,
that
I hated
stops you
this
from
movie.
producing it well. This activity should not be all you do from here. In fact, it will only account for about 3 to 4 hours a day of the next 5 days. The rest of the time should be spent on the same things as before. With about 5 days to go, you've spent almost 20 hours speaking the language aloud over the last week, and that should be starting to feel quite comfortable.
Singing is good for this as well. I mean, because on a certain level, it kind of eliminates some of the awkwardness of talking to yourself, because you're already going to be doing it. You know, you're already. I mean, singing to oneself is a thing one does. You know, and you get used to the pronunciations and stuff like that, and you get used to just having the words in your mouth, and that will definitely play a role in making it easier for you to access it when you're trying to talk.
You can now also be speaking to yourself in the mirror or on camera. What this does is to make you aware of what you're unable to say, which will help you to listen out for it in your continued immersion, which is still taking up the bulk of your time. You're not going to subconsciously acquire the idiomatic way of saying absolutely everything, but with this much exposure to the language, this act should also help you to become good at thinking of ways to say things so that you're understood. In the last 4 days, you're going to actually speak to a native speaker for a total of...
This is another one. I have someplace I have the VHS of this in Japanese dubbing. Practically know it by heart in some places because of how often I was watching it.
8 hours, 2 hours a day, in at least 8 separate conversations that take place a few hours apart. The reason that you don't do it in longer conversations is that you get significantly better at using the language to converse after each conversation, not during it. I would recommend that at this stage you could even back off the amount that you're immersing. On top of your conversations, you might want to immerse for about 6 hours of the other 13 hours of every day. And for the...
God, this just seems like an absolute... I mean, we're assuming that somebody somehow manages to block out this time. I mean, if somebody were, to actually cover all of my costs for an entire 40-day period, I would be interested to just try this out. Just take some language that I've never really done before, and never really got anywhere in before, put together the materials to do this, and just, give it a proper go, you know, the 13 hours a day, whatever, and just do bugger all else, and just see how far I get in it. let me see, he said 13 hours a day. Yeah, according to this method, and just see how well I could do with it. I mean, because the methodology he's describing is sound. I mean, his ideas on method are sound. Definitely, in that sense, I would totally recommend the channel. What I don't know about is this timeline. But if somebody were to, just cover my expenses so I didn't have to bother doing anything for 40 days other than this, I mean, if I got my Patreon up to, that could be, a neat Patreon challenge. If I got my Patreon up to, I don't know, 2,000 a month or something like that, just do this 40-day challenge and see how well it works.
The remainder, resting. No exposure to any language, even your own. So
actually, that is the hardest part right there. No exposure to any... Because to me, rest, I need background noise. My favorite background noise is, audiobooks.
Done it. You've arrived at the 40th day, having spent almost 600 hours in a new language, 20 hours producing it aloud, and 8 hours actually conversing in it. You may think that this ratio is skewed, but those hours spent speaking the language are many, many times more effective because you waited and...
Guess what? That'll be the reward for if I get my Patreon up to, let's say, $2,500 a month. Then I will do the 40-day challenge in Cambodian. Which means I'm going to have to actually get all the materials together. Part of the reason I haven't actually gotten anywhere with Cambodian is precisely that I haven't been able to find the kind of materials I'd want to use. So I would have to actually do that. But I think that might be, I'm not, if I can find the materials that would allow me to do this, then I might actually make that, like, the reward for if my Patreon gets up to that level. Because I'm low-key curious how well this would work. As somebody who, again, I mean, I've learned a lot of languages. I speak a lot of languages. I have 20 working languages as a translator, and then there are another 20 odd that I have varying degrees of some of, and could, at least on a basic level, kind of make myself understood in. Cambodian is at the very, very, very low end of that. At the lowest end, where I just have a couple of words. It's like with Mongolian and a few others, where it's just a few words I know and that's it. But, you know, it would be a neat challenge just to see how well it worked out. I would just be curious, because I don't know about this timeline. But, yeah. And with that, it is time for me to wrap this up. Thank you, Courtney, for joining me. I will be back tomorrow. I'll be on Twitch. Let me see, which is just hyperpolyglotting, twitch.tv/hyperpolyglotting. I'll be there from the same times as today. And I will see you then.